The people, the headlines, the issues impacting you, all on This Week in Cincinnati on 9 on Your Side.
I want to welcome you back. We're speaking with Chief Muterspaw and Representative Davidson, who's actually been here before. In fact, in one installment of This Week in Cincinnati, we asked you how people reacted to special counsel investigation into Russian meddling in the election and what happens if there are findings against President Trump. You pointed to the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. Let's play a portion of that interview.
There were all these chants, lock her up, talking about Hillary Clinton. And, you know, for some people, I think, sure, genuinely they didn't like Hillary Clinton, but what they especially didn't like was the idea that anyone would be above the law, that there'd be one standard for the regular people and a different standard for the political class.
So coming out of that soundbite, do you think that there's the same level of discontent now that there was back then with a different person? Yes, no, should there be?
I think there's always a concern, and I think our country's right to place a high value on justice, and frankly, justice being, you know, Lady Justice being blindfolded. In the case here, you know, unlike the Hillary Clinton investigation, there's actually a special counsel with Robert Mueller, and there was no belief that there was actually any independent body looking at Hillary Clinton. Here, the speculation has been, how independent is Mueller really? So the idea that he's running an investigation, very popular. The idea that he's running an inquisition has certainly been perceived by many, and the way he staffed his team gave people a lot of concern. Frankly, out of all the lawyers in America, an insane amount of them have close ties to Hillary Clinton and to previous investigations that involved the Clintons. And so it's fueled some of the conspiracy theories, and we'll see when we finally see special counsel's actual report, you know, how it stands. Does it stand on its own merit or not?
Irrespective of party, follow justice where it leads? Yeah,
absolutely. It's not a partisan thing, and the only way it could actually be good for the country is if it is clearly above partisan politics.
Okay. You talk about good for the country. The government shutdown affected so many people. When you're talking hundreds of thousands of government workers, and you know, some of them live paycheck to paycheck, and this was really hobbling. What were you telling your constituency about that and fixing that?
Yeah, so as I said, I worked to try to prevent a shutdown because I felt like you're going to catch people that really don't have a lot of say in this. And then the worst line that you could think to draw would be a line that says you're so essential that you have to go to work, but you're not so essential that you have payroll.
Right.
So it seemed to me,
that's tough.
you know, completely unjust that you would expect people to work and then not pay them. Still bad for the people that were furloughed through no fault of their own, but particularly an irrational place to draw the line. So I could see, well, gee, the government shut down, so the air traffic controllers aren't at work today because the whole tower isn't opening. Or you're so essential you're at work and you get paid, but the line that's been drawn is no one gets paid, but you're still expected to work, I think was particularly bad. So we had some dialogue among colleagues. We didn't get a vote on that particular package, but I think that was the clear sentiment. And I think the vast majority of Congress would have preferred to avoid the shutdown. The reality is that fight worth having? And obviously people on both sides felt that way and stayed that way until the president said, let's do a deal and come to the table. Let's get people back to work, get them paid. And I think that's right. I think if he can't get a deal, he should push for a 2-year CR. And if he can't get Congress to sign a 2-year CR, because frankly one of the bipartisan desires is to spend a lot of money, all the proposals so far put forth by Speaker Pelosi spend more money and change terms and conditions. So I think his leverage is on spending. And then he could say, if he can't get that signed, that I will sign an unlimited number of 3-week CRs. CRs generally aren't good. They're particularly disruptive for the military. But the president really is right to say that securing our border has to be a priority. There is no border between here and Middletown. And a lot of the drugs that are on our street are put here across the southern border. And aside from whether they come in through legal ports of entry, the cartels are dominating this trade. They're dominating the trade in drugs, but also in human trafficking. And the people that are showing up at the border are being driven out of their homes by the cartels. Then the cartels charge them to bring them to America. It's a real problem.
Are all drugs coming in from the southern border, though? And Chief Muterspaw, perhaps you can answer that.
I wouldn't say all drugs, but I say most drugs. I mean, we're dealing with it now, and we've done some federal investigations that have stretched into California and Mexico from Middletown. So you think of the distance between that, and that's where it's coming in, and we did some federal cases along that line. But we know from dealing
ports of entry, is it coming in through ports of entry?
Yes,
okay.
yes, ports of entry also. But the majority of what we deal with, I know in our region, is coming from Mexico. I can tell you that. Yes.
I want to get back to this discussion in just a second, but I do want to ask you, Chief Muterspaw, how does something like the government shutdown trickle down to your level in the sense you work with federal agents, correct?
We do.
So how does that, I mean, could it compromise the work that you do?
You know, it could if it was maybe longer.
Yeah.
I know that we work with a lot of FBI agents, and I know recently during the shutdown they were still in working with us on some of our federal cases. I know that they came to work even though that there wasn't a paycheck coming. But yeah, I'm sure it could if it was long term.
Okay.
But short term, I don't think, I mean, we still got the job done and they still worked with us on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Discussions. This is what I want to talk about when we come back from the break, because we have to take another break. But the discussions and the merit of the discussions surrounding the border wall and whether or not there will be another shutdown. Okay?
Perfect.
Thank you. And we will be right back. This Week in Cincinnati will continue.
The people, the headlines, the issues impacting you, all on This Week in Cincinnati on 9 on Your Side.